Good evening. It's raining, I think I heard. I'm Terry Nemeth. I'm the publisher of Theater Communications Group in New York. For those of you who don't know TCG, we are the National Organization for the Non-for-Profit Theater in the United States. And for over 50 years, TCG has existed to strengthen, nurture, and support theater in America. We have a membership of over 500 theaters, over 300 university and business affiliates, and 8,000 individual members. TCG serves as a conjunction point for all those constituents. We offer various re-granting programs to support professional development and mentoring, provide annual research studies on fiscal health, educational outreach, and audience engagement, resources to develop diversity, inclusion, and equity in theater organizations, a primary advocate for not-for-profit theater on the federal level. As you can probably guess, we're also a publisher. TCG Books is the largest trade publisher of dramatic literature in the United States. We've published over 400 titles and 14 Pulitzer Prize winning plays. Most recently, Stephen Birbiglia From Riverside to Crazy. We also published Art Search and American Theater Magazine for the last 33 years. When we were first approached to publish Seth's book, we were initially a little hesitant. We published a rare few acting books on our list. In over 30 years, I think we've done 5. There's so many out there, and so we weren't quite sure. While it was under consideration, our board president, Phil Himberg, who's the director of the Sundance Theater Institute, sent me an email. It read in part, I just wanted to put in a few words about Seth. He's an esteemed acting coach and has worked with some of the great actors at Broadway, Off-Broadway, and Hollywood. This book is unlike anything else. It's sort of like haikus on specific elements of performance and character building. I think it'll be important for us, meaning TCG, to publish this. Them's are my 2 cents, he says. Let me know if I can be of further assistance. With those words from Mr. Himberg, we dove into the book and realized how special it was, how crystal clear, how authentic, and what an ongoing support system for any working actor. And so thank you, Philip, for your 2 cents. And from your 2 cents, we've gotten a book worth its weight in gold. Thank Kathy Silva, who is our editorial director at TCG, who fine-tuned the book itself. The cover design by Lisa Dovian, which is kind of a great cover design. And I'd like to turn over the festivities without further ado to Mike Birbiglia. As you know, an actor, director, an awesomely talented comedian, and a seriously funny individual. So, Seth,
on with Seth Barrish, everyone. That's my 2 cents. That email was written and directed by Seth Barrish. Just throw it away in that email. Yeah. Just throw away this line. Yeah. Just make less of it.
You blew my cover, man. What? You blew my cover.
I know.
Philip Himberg, right?
You wrote that email.
I did.
This is so exciting. This book, I was just saying in the hall that my favorite book on acting I've ever read was in college. It was Uta Hagen's book, Respect for Acting. And then I read this, and I think it's better. Shots fired. Shots fired at the Barrow Group.
I didn't even do that.
I know. We talked about it a lot. What was that like? One of the things you say in your book, which I love, is that you, after a while, you don't even know who to credit your lessons. No, that's true though. And I can totally relate to that because you learn so many different things from so many different people, and after a while, you're just like, I'm just the sum total of my influence.
Absolutely. In fact, a lot of the people that I learned things from are sitting in this room. For real, it's crazy. You just at a certain point, you have all this information. You go, I have no idea where the hell I read this book. It's there. Somehow, some part of my lizard brain goes, I think I invented that.
Use that instinct. Keep that instinct. I think they invented that. That's what Edison did. A team of people working on a light bulb, and he goes, I think I invented that. But this is really wonderful. One of the things I love about it is the simplicity of it. Do you have to, when you're writing this, did you have to cut back what was verbose at a certain point to keep it simple?
Yeah, actually not really, because the way this happened, I was on a theater job. This is in, I think, 2000. Because this book there was another version of this book, very similarly titled, that had a different subtitle, that we self-published here. And then when TCG expressed interest, we were thrilled, and that morphed into this book. But when the first book began, I was on a theater job in Albany. Have any of you been to Albany?
What did you shout?
Yeah, what did you shout?
The blonde one?
All baloney. All baloney.
Oh, okay.
Oh, baloney. I've never heard that flattering nickname. All baloney.
There's not a lot to do in Albany, and for me anyway, there wasn't a lot to do. And I was, so I had a ton of time on my hands, and I had been teaching for a long time, and I thought, you know, maybe I should take this time and codify some of the stuff and actually write it down. And I read a book when I was in college called About Acting by Peter Barkworth, which was formatted in a similar style as very short chapters. And some of the book I really liked. Some of it, you know, I just had different opinions about things. But the format just stuck with me, and I went, if I ever do this, I want to do it in this short format. So for me, there wasn't cutting back. In fact, my whole teaching and coaching style is based around trying to get everything as distilled as possible, because I find that a lot of noise and talk actually confuses the issue for folks. So.
Who is your do you have a single most influential teacher along the way?
I don't. I have several, and I actually, you know, since we're here, I'll quickly acknowledge them. One of them just passed away weeks ago. Who was my high school teacher, this guy named Dan Caldwell. And I just had the most extraordinary high school teacher I can even think of. He was a working professional director, he was a working professional actor, he was a president of the Northwestern sector of SAG while we were in high school. He would bring in, you know, Broadway performers and film performers. He had all these students who had won Academy Awards. It was just ridiculous.
This is in the Bay Area?
Yeah. Just outside of San Francisco in Mill Valley. And so he was hugely influential. And then the next person that was, that was really a group. It was a children's theater company called the Magic Carpet. Who wooed the Magic Carpet? Wow, Magic Carpet. They absolutely.
Same person who was sticking to all the.
That's right. They completely had a huge influence on me. They introduced me actually to some of the fundamental tenets of improv. You know, yes, Andy. They didn't call it that, but it was the same idea. And that just, the whole, everything they did was all about following. And so I spent just all this time, I studied with them, and that had a huge influence. And then I went to school, and then I started to study with just this wide variety of teachers, and I became almost like addicted to training. I was a theater major at UCLA, and at the same time I also went out and did professional courses because I just wanted to learn as much as I possibly could. I had a lot of studio teachers, but I also had, you know, just way out movement people and Meissnerian teachers, and then I came to New York and I had just a huge mishmash, Uta Hagen and Michael Kahn and John Stix and all these people, and they all had a huge influence. You know.
I was trying to think of what we should talk about tonight, and because we're all, I mean, we're all, I think, in the Barrow Group community, and so we've all read this bullshit. Say in various forms. So, I thought we're all on board for the content. So I'm like, why don't we do something that's a little different than just rehash it? So I thought, why don't we take this opportunity to ask you, and everyone included, anything you ever wanted to know about Seth, but we're So my question is, what do you do when people are terrible? Like when they just don't have it. Like, because you are, I've called you before an actor whisperer. I've seen you flip people from being terrible to being great, or at least passable. And you must have run a, you and I actually see eye to eye. We had a real mind meld with Sleepwalk with Me. You and I had one person who we disagreed with, and we will never speak that person's male or female name. But on the set,
And you were right.
I know. I pulled you aside. I was like, Seth, this person, who we won't say, they just don't have it. And you were like, no, I think this person has it. No, they don't have it. What are we gonna do? And you're like, I think we got it. And I was like, I trust you because we worked on so many things together. We get to the edit, and Seth goes, oh God, this person didn't have it. I'd never seen that happen with you before. But what do you do when that happens?
In fairness, we knew it before the edit, I think.
Yeah, we did.
Well, actually, we did talk about this. This is the only question that we talked about.
And by the way, we rehashed this and laughed about it time and
Yeah,
again, so it's not like telling tales.
Because I knew that you were going to talk about this, I brought this picture. One thing that I find really interesting about me, and
You want to repeat that sentence?
yeah, I'm going to emphasize it properly too. One thing that I find particularly interesting about me is.
How about what if you go, me?
No, I'll stick with me. But is this, I think, really interesting fact. There's actually very few things I find particularly interesting about me, but this one thing is pretty fascinating to me. I contend that I was one of the worst actors on the planet when I was in high school. And I kind of have this picture to prove it. I'm going to pass this out. Now, there's two sides to this picture. There's one where we're posed in like a ship, and I'm the prow of the ship, but you can ignore that one. And then on the other side, there's these two fellows. One is this gentleman, Anthony Fusco, who's a huge actor in the San Francisco Bay Area, still is. And this is Jamie Chestnut, who's the biggest stoner on the planet. Probably not anymore. I hope he's alive. And this is me in the corner there. And just take a look at the expression on my face as this kind of goes around.
I'll talk you through it a little bit as people are seeing it. You are playing an inanimate object, and you have an extreme amount of tension in your face.
It's absolutely true. I am playing a rook, as in a chess piece
yeah.
that has no lines. My job was to kneel. Period. Now, I can, to this day, remember what I was thinking while I was sitting there kneeling, which might explain a little bit that look of torture on my face. One of the, it's funny.
You were thinking, I wish I were the king.
Nothing that organic. We had been told that, and I mean, I know I just lauded my high school teacher, and he was fantastic. He did have this one notion that probably was misguided in our heads anyway. He had the sense that one very important thing for an actor is to have what he called energy. And so we turned that into literally the cast of this play in the locker room. Our dressing room was the girls' locker room, which was kind of exciting. But we would literally bang like on the blockers, boom, 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 and go, and we would just like pump ourselves up into this fury, and then we would storm the stage across the gym. We'd be like,
Nothing creates more energy than shouting the word energy.
And then we were standing. I was there kneeling in that play, and in my head I was thinking, and my face followed suit. This was pretty much the case for anything I did in high school. This was what was going on in my mind.
Yeah.
And it led to some extreme tension. And this is something that when I saw that picture, I actually loved it, because I realized you can change, you can get better. So when I look at somebody, I go, they don't have it, maybe. I think, yeah, I didn't. I had a strong desire. I had a strong drive. You have a whole thing you often talk about delusion.
Yeah, sure.
And how it can be incredible.
Positive way.
Yeah.
Positive thing.
Very positive.
A lot of actors in the room have all gone through stages. We need a delusion to power us through.
That's right. And it gets us, but it I think actually is an important thing. There was something at the heart of what was going on for me that I think was actually a good thing. I loved the form, I loved what we do, I loved people, I loved the possibilities, and I did have, in full disclosure, there were parts of me that were probably good at some things, some elements of acting. But this tension thing was just ridiculous. And I remember it, and when I see people that I think have not got a fully developed skill, I just kind of go like, well, you never know when it's going to bloom. Because for me, I don't know if you feel this way, but I feel like the entire, when I look back at my entire growth as an artist, it's a continual blooming. I just feel like I'm constantly, I'm a lotus flower that's just continuing. I mean, do you feel that way?
No, absolutely. I feel like you're always, this is, I feel like why I've worked with you for so many years is that I'm always learning from you.
There's one of the things that we talk about this sometimes. We'll have, you and I will have projects that are nascents. They're just kind of starting. They've got a lot of problems. But we're aware of it, but we don't spend a lot of time talking about what's problematic. We talk about what works and how can we have more of that and everything.
Yeah.
And sometimes we'll show it to other people and they'll go like, that has a lot of fun.
Yeah. There's this great This American Life episode called New Me, N-U-M-M-I, and it's about how when in Japanese car manufacturing plants, they have this phrase called NUMI, N-U-M-M-I, which means continuous improvement. And they believe that anyone along the assembly line can point out a way in which the assembly line isn't its most effective. And that person can be at any level. And if that person calls that out, they address it. The top of the chain addresses it, and as a result, their assembly lines are extremely effective.
And then they force them to commit seppuku at once. That's hard.
Assuming that's some kind of violent thing.
It is very
Just by your tone. But yeah, no, I think that's a part of it. I heard Barack Obama being interviewed by Mark Maron yesterday. Did you hear that?
on WTF?
Yeah. It's really just one of the things he says that applies, I think, to acting is he says the reason why he feels comfortable being the president now is that he doesn't have fear anymore. And that for a long time you have to fake not having fear until you don't have fear. But it takes years.
And it's something he feels particular to his second term?
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
He was saying in some ways he wishes he could do a third term because it would be better than a second term because he's actually experiencing a lack of fear, which we've all seen in a lot of his executive orders lately. But does anyone else have a question that they, and do not hold back these questions. Like, say the thing, Seth will not hold this against you.
And I will not hold back either.
And he will not hold back. Dusty, certainly you must have something. Go ahead.
I always have a question.
Okay.
This is not that interesting. It's interesting to me. So, but of all the hats that you wear, I don't mean like personal, father work, but I mean like in terms of, I would say professional, like director, actor, teacher, musician. I'm just curious if you have any sort of preference or.
I don't have a preference. I like.
Did you guys hear the question? She said of all the hats that you wear, writer, director, musician, etc., which do you prefer?
I actually enjoy all of them. They're very different. They feed me in very different ways, and it's actually been a little problematic, I think, for me, because I think that in this business, people really like to be able to say, "That's that person. They do that. They do it very well," and it makes it easy for them to wrap their brain around you. Sometimes when they meet me, they're like, "I don't get it," But I love doing all those things.
very helpful, by the way. When we worked on Sleepwalk with Me, we got in the jam with a couple songs in the edit where we didn't have a song that worked, and Seth just wrote a song. A couple songs, 2 songs. What about us? That's very helpful. By the way, that was a really weak-ass question. That's what we call in the business of softball, and we want some hardball questions here. Go ahead.
Well, Mike, you were about to ask this before, and then you guys got distracted about something.
Who's to say?
It was. What was it like training with Uta Hagen?
Okay. I feel a little sacrilegious about this, but I will be honest. First of all, she was an amazing teacher. It was towards the end of my training period, so part of the time when I was there, I would watch things and I go, she's going to say that, and then she would say it, and I go, yeah, that's good. But she was...
Because it was predictable?
Yeah, it was so pretty good. No, it was actually, I had done so much training, I kind of learned how different teachers look at things. She was, for me, phenomenal. The first interaction I had with her, I was doing this, I tell this in my classes sometimes, so some of you heard this story, so forgive me, but a lot of you probably haven't. The first scene I did in her class was with an actress named Andrea McCardle. Andrea was famous for being the original Annie. And it was a scene from a play at the same time next year in which we had just supposedly had sex. And of course, I was the entire time going, oh my God, I'm in bed with Annie. This is really weird. But truth be told, both Andrea and I were terrified about just getting up in front of Uta Hagen. And so we did this scene, and it was a comedic scene, and we got so many laughs. And inside I was just going, yeah. But I was like, And so the way her class ran is you did a scene, and then she gave a quick critique. So I did the scene, and she said, Seth, and I was like, yeah. She goes, you have an unbelievable understanding of what's funny. And I was like, oh, thanks. And silence. And then she said, such a shame. And it was a huge, huge lesson. I mean, after the ego thing went, whoa, and all of a sudden, it was profound. And the next week I came back and I went, well, whatever I do, I'm certainly not going to try to be funny at all. And I found...
And she thought you were forcing it? I don't get it.
She thought that, not forcing it, but I was just aware of the mechanics of it. And I was sort of, this, if I do this, this will be funny. And it was. It gets a laugh, all that stuff. And so the next week when I came back, I said, well, whatever the hell I do, I'm not going to, in any sense, try to be funny. And I found it, and I'm sure you've experienced this at the same time, I got absolutely as many laughs, but they came in completely different places, and I didn't know what they were laughing at. Except I had this awareness that they're telling me this is funny. I wasn't telling them this is funny, they were telling me. And it was, to me, it opened up a whole universe. It was an incredibly profound lesson. Now, on the weird side of things with Uta Hagen,
I was like, when's the other shoe going to drop on this one? It's very complimentary.
It's very complimentary. She had big power trips, and she would make her daughter call her Miss Hagen. Her daughter was in class. And
in her class?
In her class. And people would all go up, and when they talked with her, they all kneeled, so they'd go, like, if she was
She demanded that?
She didn't demand it, it just happened. She certainly did not discourage it.
It's not something that's organic.
I'm sure if you didn't do it, she would insist you must call her Miss Hagen. If anybody called her Uta, that she had a cow. And every once in a while she would throw people out of her class permanently in the middle of class. Just they'd do a scene and it just wasn't that good, it was okay. And right on the spot she'd go, I don't think you're ready for this class, please leave. And it was very uncomfortable and awful. But she was, she had a lot of good points in that too. That put a chill in her.
Yeah, I had a student a couple of weeks ago who asked me, and one of the things I love about this technique, and everybody here is everybody's so giving and things like that. And she asked me, how come you don't yell at anybody? I mean, is there a reason why you don't, really put us down? Well, which is interesting. I mean, it's just an observation because, well, that's not the way I can work, and that's what I mean about this technique. Is one of the best things about this community is that everyone is, and the teachers are all so giving, and I don't know anybody who yells at anybody here.
There better be a question at the end of this. Your question is worse than hers. Hers wasn't good.
But it's an observation because I'm just saying that's what I.
All right, I just want to set some ground rules. No more observations.
Tell the hot tub story.
Thank you for your observation. Duly noted. From here on in, we're doing only questions.
Yeah, it's a good point, Ron. And very quickly, that for me, and I'm not the only one who's sharing this stuff. You all know Lee, and Lee is the co-artistic director here, and I'm very vulnerable to negative feedback, and I find it useless. I go where the light is, and so I help people improve as best as the same way I want people to help me improve by saying that's good. And it's kind of standard behavior modification. Stroke the good stuff and kind of ignore the bad stuff, and it works out.
And who's next? Go ahead.
Hi, Seth. James. Yeah, I wanted to know, what made you transition from, well, for me, my training has been based upon, I, me, what I'm going to do, how I feel and everything. And then when I started training here, it became more about serving a story. And I told you in class not too long ago, you were giving me an adjustment. And I said, well, frankly, it's always been fuck the story, and it's about my performance. And you shifted to, no, I'm a vessel, we're more of a vessel, and we tell the story. Could you elaborate on the adjustment? Because I notice a lot of times in scene study where, the first take or the first time we run the scene, or my experience when I run the scene, a lot of emphasis is placed on me and how it's going to go and how it's going to work, and it never turns out that way. It never turns out the way I want it to. But then when you give the adjustment, it's just it becomes fun for the most part. Well, what made you work in that manner or take so much?
I honestly have no idea. I can say this, that
Do you want to reiterate the question?
Oh yeah, sure. What's the question?
The question was, what made you have a training based on the story opposed to, more of the actor being a vessel? I hear that loud and clear. It's kind of changing my life as far as my acting is concerned.
Yeah.
The actor being a vessel to tell the story opposed to working myself up.
You didn't know what the question was, and your answer was, I have no idea.
Yeah. It's a good answer when you don't know.
Great answer. Not in my house.
No, the question is, where did my focus go off of my own performance or other people's performances and onto a larger thing, the story?
Right, you mentioned most of your training, you was addicted to the training, so it was more about your performance, but here it seems like it's more about the story. When did that shift, what made you?
I don't know, I really don't know the answer to that, other than to say that I had been exposed to both kinds of philosophies throughout the course of my training. And I found that when my attention was on myself and how I was doing, I was constantly assessing myself, and I was coming out of that assessment in very poor shape. I basically thought, I suck, I failed, this is not going well and everything. It was just taking me down. But I found whenever my attention went on to larger things that I knew as large was the story, the world around me, other people, the context, the set, just listening and all that stuff, I went away feeling a sense of growth and this is good. And one of the biggest epiphanies for me was when the Berger first began, we did a play called Blue Window in a very tiny little place. Do you know the play? You knew Albany, and she also knew that other thing that there's no way she knew. She's a clapper.
Which thing?
The Magic Carpet.
Oh, the Magic Carpet, of course.
You're a liar. No, you're not a liar. But actually, do you know Blue Window, the play?
Yes.
You do. Okay. It's a tiny play. It's a small play that has 7 people in it. And when the Bear Group first started, we did it in 1987 at a place called the Corner Loft that sat 40 people. And it was a very powerful play. The star of the play was the lead. And this is going to sound like I'm exaggerating. I'm not. There were only 40 people per night in this audience. Lee still gets stopped on the street. This absolutely happens. Oh my God. Blue window. She's amazing. And what happened was we did a performance one night, and a woman came up who had seen the performance, actually a friend of Lee's, and she said after the performance, "Can I give you a hug?" And I was used to more like, "Great job," and all that stuff. And so I said, "Okay, sure." And so she hugged me, and I hugged her, and she completely broke down on my arm and just started sobbing. And something clicked for me. I went, "This is about her. It's not about me." And that stayed with me. It has stayed with me. And so I just think that there's something bigger at work when people come and say, "Nice job." I mean, the ego part of me goes, "Oh, it's just nice to hear that stuff." But I'm actually much more interested in what's happening for other people when we're doing our stuff, So
That's
I
the
don't know if
biggest,
that's
that's the
that.
biggest thing I've taken away from working with you over the years, and I've learned so much. I feel like I've worked with probably 15 acting teachers in my life, and 90% of what I use is from you. And I feel like the biggest thing from the one-person shows we've done together is making it about the audience. And I always, whenever people ask me for advice, I always just say, "Well, Seth Barrish says." I really do. I think that's often the missing ingredient in plays and in movies and a lot of things.
It's just not, the other stuff is suitable for therapy and stuff like that, but it's just not.
Which is great also.
It is.
It's been really amazing for me. And I think you guys need someone. I have this woman
She's so
in the
good.
Wall Street area, Dr. Jaskolki, and she is phenomenal.
Dr. Jaskolki.
Yeah, Jaskolki.
Oh, Jaskolki.
Dr. J. Wonderful.
Nice.
Who, by the way, when we first started seeing each other, pointed out to me that she's a comedian also.
Are you serious?
I was dying to get away from my profession. She said, "Well, it just so happens. Maybe it also."
That's just the saddest therapy session.
We've been together for 15 years.
Oh, that's good.
Who else has a question? Who's really going to stick it to Seth? That's the question. Who has a really hard question? Frank, come on. I know you have a hard question.
I don't, but I always wonder, why do you love doing what you do?
Well, that's a great question. Why do you love doing what you do?
Wow. I don't even think I've ever been asked that.
Stop doing his tracks.
It did. Stop in my tracks. All I can say about it is that the love for it came early. I was shown storytelling in theater and stuff when my parents showed me that stuff when I was introduced as an audience member probably when I was 5 or so. And I was just frequently transported. I often tell the story that it's true. When I was in high school, I used to volunteer usher at the American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco when they were sort of in their prime. And it didn't even occur to me until years later that every time I ushered, and this is true, every time I fell asleep. It never occurred to me. What changed it for me, when it did occur to me, is when I saw a play that changed my life, that really started all of this, in a sense. I saw a play that was done where the acting style was so realistic, and I couldn't tell people were acting. And I didn't fall asleep for a second. And that actually registered. And that's when I realized, oh my God, I always fell asleep. I think I have a little touch of narcolepsy, for real.
Yeah.
I think I do.
Round of applause if you have narcolepsy. Who is dealing with this debilitating illness?
That would be the first time narcolepsy ever got applause, I think.
No, not in a wig of narcolepsy.
The play I saw was a college production at UCLA. It was a play called The Transgressor.
You and I have that in common when we talk about like the movie Once,
Oh, yeah.
where I think Seth and I share this in common, where we're so moved by this movie because you're just like, where is the fucking line
Yeah.
in this movie? How are these not these people?
Yeah. And I found that my engagement in the story was just 100 times more, and so it became just a cornerstone of everything that I continue to do. But I don't know where the love for it comes. I just know that there's something for me religious about it. I'm not a fan in any sense of organized religion, and I think maybe this has filled that hole for me. I find it to be a deeply spiritual experience. That's all I can think of to say about it. It's a great question.
We're going to be passing out a basket at the end of this. Just at $5, $10. It's not that important.
Because I have
Go ahead in the back.
Hi, Seth, it's Beth.
Hey, Beth.
My playwriting students we're going to ask one question, then we're going to go back to class. You worked with Mike on Sleepwalk with Me, with Marty Moran on the tricky part, and you teach script analysis, so you do a lot with text.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you can talk about how some of the things in the book apply to playwriting.
I'm interested because you had mentioned that the other day to me. You said that you found the book. You and Stephanie Zadrovic, another playwright. We had a talk back after the pavilion one night. You guys both mentioned that. I'm not sure. I think that the one thing that comes to mind is that all the tools, certainly in this book, and in so much of the things I share in any kind of coaching or teaching situation, steer people towards what they're doing. One of my favorite quotes is "what, not how." The idea being that if you put your attention on what you're doing and doing it, you're in good standing. And if you have your attention on how you're doing it, you get into trouble. And I think in that sense, I can see how that would be very applicable to playwriting. As you're writing a scene, a lot of times I think it could be so easy to get sucked into like, oh, this character thinks this way, or is that way, or feels this thing, or is going through this kind of problem, or any of that stuff. And I think there are many things that might be in this book that help steer you towards, even though it's geared towards actors, towards putting your attention on just what are you doing.
Yeah, for example, the chapter called Entrances and Exits. It's true.
Yeah, it's true.
It's like, just do what you do.
That's right.
Do what you do and have a reason.
That chapter you're talking about talks about like coming in, doing something, and leaving in the middle of doing something, because it helps tell a story that there's a world beyond the stage. And I think that a lot of these things steer people towards the pragmatic side of things and away from the sort of esoteric and endlessly complex side of things. And I can see how that would be incredibly useful. There are so many plays I read where the characters are really rich and wonderfully developed and all of this stuff, and they say beautiful lines, but there's something that seems to not hold up, and when the play is read, at a certain point, a fatigue sets in for the viewers. So I would imagine in that sense it might be helpful. Does that make sense, Beth? Are there any
Yes,
other things?
that is so useful because I tell them they need to be doing something, otherwise the actors are going to fold laundry in the scene.
That's true too.
Chapter 20.
Also, there's a chapter about conflict, and certainly there needs to be a conflict, and that's certainly true in playwriting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any scene that does not have a conflict in a play is
trouble.
really not for the stage. Lee, do you have a question? You certainly must have the deepest of deep questions that you would never bring up at home. This is your chance. This is the moment.
Seth, what's your most embarrassing moment on stage?
Nice. That's a good question. Well done.
That's good. Okay, so I'm going to start with the 2 times, count them 2, I fell asleep.
That's just a humble brag, though. That's you having the ultimate moment of relaxation.
That was totally. One was in high school.
One time, everyone just started crying in the middle of a sentence I spoke. And I was like, stop crying, there's the rest of the play.
I was in high school in our town. I was playing a dead person. And I successfully died. And I was woken up by, I still remember my line. My line was, my boy Joe was a mighty fine sailor. I just said it just like that. And I remember, well, I don't remember what happened up until this moment, but I was elbowed by Andrea Goyan, I remember her name, and I was sitting there, and I felt this elbow, and I woke, and I didn't know where I was for a second, and then I heard this sniffling, and I realized that the woman who was playing Emily was crying, because she was so freaked out that nobody was talking. And I just heard her like, and I was like, what's going on? And all of a sudden I went, my boy Joe. So I remember that. Then the second time was a little even more embarrassing. I was at Circle Rep.
It's more embarrassing than that?
I was at Circle Rep. It was like it's such a big thing for me to come to New York. I landed at Circle Rep. I was so thrilled to be involved with that company. It was just this huge beacon for me. And we were doing the lower depths, and the way the play was open, there was a bunch of actors. It's set in a flop house, and a bunch of actors were supposed to be all asleep. And so we were there for like 30 minutes while the house was coming in and everything. And so I just thought, I'm going to go for it. And I did. I went to sleep. I was woken up, as I was supposed to be, in the play, but it didn't go well, because what happened was I absolutely freaked out. I had no idea where I was. And so when the guy woke me up on the stage, I went, and I looked out, and it was this, inside my brain was just like, whoa! That came into focus, and I think those are the most embarrassing.
I wanted to ask you a question, which is, where do you find your energy from? Because we work together a lot, and I feel like you have sort of a boundless energy.
Wow. I don't know. I've always been that way. I'm kind of. I think I get off on the adrenaline and workaholic kind of stuff. I think you're a little this way, although you're very good about setting sleep boundaries, which is I'm not. But I get wired, creatively. I don't know. It's just there. It's kind of. I don't think I sleep enough. I need to sleep more. But I've always been very high metabolism that way.
What about those weird shoes you always wear? Are you still going to keep wearing it?
The
toe shoes?
You talking about the toe shoes?
How come you stopped wearing the toe shoes?
I stopped wearing the toe shoes because
You're familiar with the toe shoes Seth wears?
Vibrams, I used to wear those.
Individualized toes?
I stopped them because I have to wear these insoles now because of this horrible injury I had. And the insoles don't have reticulated toes, so I have to go to full.
Okay, I take credit for that terrible question. Let's do two more. Go ahead.
So, what was something that you and Lee used to do back in the beginning with your ensemble that sort of fell by the wayside that you kind of want to reinstate or get back into?
Wow. She's really projecting a lot. What's this thing that you stopped doing years ago, but you desperately want to do again?
I don't know, is there anything that you find yourselves wishing we could do again?
Well, I mean, I think producing more with that, that you're young and 20 and just reproducing all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this is an answer to your question, but what she's bringing up is,
When you say Blue Window, that's a whole different time.
Yeah, I wish that I had the optimism that I had back then, in terms of, when creating a project and believing this will change the world maybe. And now I believe, well, this will last a couple weeks.
Bob Dylan has that line in his AARP interview recently. It's a great interview, by the way. Bob Dylan did one single interview for his new album of Frank Sinatra covers, and they asked him how he feels about his old songs. And he says, well, they're better than any songs I'll ever write again, because when you're young, you have passion, and when you're old, you have wisdom. And let's do one last question. Who has the best question? Are you convinced?
I have to be now, don't I?
Yes, you do. Go ahead.
All right. You talked about self-confidence in your acting and how many classes you took in college. At what point did you start to think that you were good at this? And is that the same as the point you actually were?
I think I always have and always believe that I'm both really, really, really good at this and really, really terrible at this. Both. That has always coexisted for me. And to me, actually, part of the journey is learning to the monster that says, you know, you're a fraud. To find some way to make peace with it and realize that that's part of the thing. That these fears actually help motivate you and consciously and subconsciously and all of that. And when things are going well, my attention is actually not on any of that. I don't worry about how good or bad I am. I just try to do, you know, just keep doing it. That said, you know, I am human. I have an ego, and you know, I get somebody says, you know, I don't like that, and there's a little part of me that, of course, that goes, ow, that really hurt. But there's another part of me that says, yeah, let's not pay too much attention to that. I have other things to do. I don't know if that's a good answer for that question, but
That's a great answer. Seth Barrish, everybody. The book is An Actor's Companion by Seth Barrish. Tools for the Working Actor, and pick one up at your local university bookstore.
So I'm going to go out there and sign for anybody who wants to book sign, but thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate the support. It's really